All right. We are live, everyone, for another week of the Unforgettable Experience live show. I'm here with my friend, Danny. Danny, it looks like all the technology is working, and so we can have this conversation. So I am so excited that we can actually pause and officially start. How about that? Are you ready?
Yay! Yay, technology. Yes.
3, 2. Hey, welcome everybody to the Unforgettable Experience live show. My name is Phil Mershon, and I'm here with my friend Dani Goeppert. She's all the way across the pond in Austria, and we're going to have a conversation today about online events, specifically summits, and maybe we'll get into challenges versus summits. I don't know, Dani. It depends on where you want to go, but Dani is the founder and CEO of Risen Events, and she has been doing online events, consulting, producing, speaking at for quite a while. And this is probably the thing she's most proud of. She's a mama of 6 kids. And so, Dani, thanks for being on the show. Welcome.
Such a pleasure to be here, Phil. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Dani, I've got to ask the question. How did you get into producing online events? Tell us the story.
And it's probably similar to so many other stories listening. It's an accident. It really was an accident. There was no degree in high school that prepares you for online or virtual events. But yeah, I started my online business in 2018. It ended up being blogging at first because I heard, oh my goodness, I can write words and earn money somehow. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be a blogger, started my blog, got into WordPress, figured out how to do it. It was horrible. I blogged for about a year, learned that I was supposed to build my email list, built that up to about 20 people, including my grandma and my mom. And then the blog got hacked, unfortunately, and I was just about ready to give up with this whole online business. I didn't really earn any money. I earned my first $7 at the end of that year when I figured out you have to have a product to sell. And I wrote an ebook and I was like, oh, I made my first $7. You need a product to sell. And the next problem I realized was, besides the hacked blog, was I have no idea about marketing or sales. So that led me into learning the skills of marketing and selling online, which led me into the ClickFunnels 2, Club coaching club that they have with Russell Brunson. If anyone is familiar there, I got into all things funnels, marketing, copywriting, selling. It was an awesome experience. And when I joined that program at the time, I was really frustrated with myself. I wasn't able to sell a $27 product. I did not even have the confidence to do that online. And I had been interested in doing events. I had seen webinars and stuff, but I wasn't really sure, how to go about doing things. And when I joined this program, they actually walked you through, or us through, launching a business with a summit. So instead of the common thought is we need to be someone first in order to do an event. This was really a backwards process. It was, well, choose who you want to work with and think about what you'd like to offer. Let's build the audience, and then you launch a business, then you launch a product. So that's what I did. I walked with through that. I kind of chose a rough idea. I wanted to serve moms because I was familiar with that audience. I was doing homeschooling at the time. I did the Courageous Mama Summit, and it was massively successful. For not knowing what we were doing, I partnered with my sister in it. We brought like 20 different speakers in. We did it both as mamas part-time, and we brought in our first 1,000 registrants in just a weekend. So looking at that experience, being able to partner with 20 amazing women who were speakers at the summit, and thinking about the whole year I spent blogging and creating content, getting 20 people and a $7 versus a weekend, a summit, earning our first 4 figures at the time, which was really exciting when you're struggling to sell a $7 product, and having 1,000 people on our email list was mind-blowing. And I thought, well, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't want to go back to like tediously trying to build my email list. And this was a lot of fun. I got to be on stage. I got to talk to a lot of interesting people. And so that basically led me into consulting and creating my own virtual event agency, doing it for people, because it just simply is a bit logistical. Like, there are a lot of things that you have to consider when you're creating your event. And most people, if they're not weird like me, they'd rather pass it on to someone else to do it so they could just show up and be on stage. So that's how I got into it.
That's amazing. And I think what's cool about your story is you had to learn marketing at the same time as learning event production. And I know from your other career before you got into this that you've been part of events for a long time, but doing online events is different. One of the common theories out there is that, during the pandemic, online events became a necessity. We all had to do it. You were doing it before the pandemic, like I was. But then the common belief is that, well, now that the pandemic is over and we're into this new era, are summits really valuable anymore? So I know what your answer is, but I want you to give some nuance, why you think they're not dead and what you think the important things are that we need to be doing to make sure that they're getting the value that we want, because you can do a summit and not get the results. So go ahead and talk about that for a
All
minute.
right. Well, there's a couple things in there. First, I like to point out, like, is the internet going away? No, that's not a fad. We have the internet. We are still humans who need connection, right? So what you and I are doing right now is a sort of online event, right? Podcasting is a stage, right? Summits is another stage. Challenges, we can talk about that later, is another stage. YouTube is another stage. So those stages aren't going away, right? Simply because we're human, we have the internet, and this is our new reality. Our new reality is that we also have this ability to connect with each other internationally. On the other hand, yes, we do have in-person events, and they are so valuable, and they have also an important part of our relationship and gathering together, conferences. But I think the common thought is, well, because now we can move or we can meet in person, therefore we do not need summits. But they're actually completely different things. Meeting in person, having an in-person event has a different, and you of all people know this, there's different goals and different touch points in the in-person event than we have in an online event. So why are summits or online events not going away? Because we are still humans who crave connection, information, momentum, being part of something greater than being alone here in our office, just like you and I right now, right? We're like alone, and we need to have that connection. And so this is where the power of summits comes in.
Let's talk about different kinds of summits, because 12 years ago, when with Social Media Examiner, we were producing these 4-week long summits.
Wow.
We would have 40 plus sessions, 3 a day, 3 or 4 days a week for a month, and people would pay us money, $297, $397, whatever it was. I don't remember the amounts, and we'd get thousands of people showing up. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You can't do that today. People
No.
don't do that the same way they do. And one of the things I have heard has changed since the pandemic is that people are not willing to go for as long. I even noticed this last year when I did a summit for 4 days, that the first day was really the only day I got a lot of people. After that, the drop off was profound. Like it went from, let's just say, it was 100 people on the first day. I don't remember the numbers. Let's just say 100 people showed the first. Then it was like down to 60, then 40. Then by the last day, we were at 20. It was a big drop off, and people don't seem interested in multi-day events in the same way they used to, and for staying as long. I don't know if that's your experience, or what would you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing total shifts in even purchase behavior, right? And that just goes with how consumers are shifting and how they're consuming content, how they're purchasing things. And that just means for us as event professionals, or when we're considering doing an event, is thinking, well, what kind of experience do people want? Are people really, are they really craving shorter and sweeter content? Because we also see people who are binge watching things on Netflix, or they're binge watching TikTok series. So it might not be the fact that it's online. It could just be the way that we're establishing or putting together our events. And I think that has to do with, like, well, what kind of experience are we offering people? And the thing that I'm seeing is working more is especially in events is creating different ways to engage people, different ways to perhaps gamify the experience.
Mm.
And I see, when we have community aspects and when there's more gamification, there's something in it for them, then we see people showing up quite a bit. So I think, and what I'm saying is like, it's not going to be the same for every nation, every person, but I think we really do have to think about the person and how can we create an overarching story. What is the purpose of the event? Is it just random information, or can we create a promise in the event that after the event, this is what's going to happen? They're going to, you know, gain a skill, or what's in it for them in the event. And I don't think we didn't have to think so much about like what's in it for the person 12 years ago, because it was still a bit novel. Like,
Right.
wow, like I get all this information, and now we're like, well, now I have YouTube, now I have TikTok. Like, we can't do the same thing as those things. We have to make events stand out, unique, special. And how could we do that? And there's a bunch of different ways that you can. One would be gamification, that adding rewards, adding and we see that all over the place. We see gamification in shopping now, right? So being conscious of how the modern consumer, how today our people are shopping or attending events, I think is really integral.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you have an event in mind that you've produced recently that you can walk us through how you thought about the person coming and what their reasons for coming were and how you could keep them engaged so that they would keep coming back. Can you, do you have one that you could talk about?
I have, okay, so I actually just ran my own challenge recently. And because we're always testing out different styles of event, and maybe we could talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I noticed that I had, repeat people coming and showing up because of the rewards that I was offering. I was offering a scholarship, and I noticed that in
Mm.
a few of my other previous events that when we offered like a cool prize and got people to engage and be part of it, they got way more out of the event. I remember we had an event in October, brought in about like 10,000 registrants to this event, and they were highly engaged women. They were all over, like I think they had a bingo game built within the event, within all the speakers. So they were looking for nuggets. They were looking for to fill out their little bingo sheet, and then they would be able to cash that in for a cool reward. And that worked really well. We built that event within, I believe it was Circle, the community platform.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a little bit of pain in the butt with 10,000 people, right? But
Wow.
it sure was fun. And we saw engagement that was vastly different from, other events where we've run and we didn't have that. And people were just kind of like, not so interesting.
It's interesting. I was part of a challenge recently myself. I wasn't running it. I was there as an attendee. And something they did that I thought was super smart is before it ever even started, it was going to run for a week, and it was going to be 5 days of content with some breaks in between. But they did a couple things that were very smart. One is they said, before it ever starts, we want you to introduce yourself and use a hashtag. And by the way, and then they also had to get on a coaching call with somebody. In that coaching call, they said, hey, if you're a top contributor in the Facebook group, then it's going to make you eligible for other prizes. So all of a sudden, they motivated me, say, oh, well, I'm going to be a top contributor. I'm going to see what I have to do to make sure I get that little, designation in the group. So you go live and then introduce yourself. And then you're obviously incentivized to start engaging with others before even the first session. And then what they're having you do is every day they had different hashtags that they said, hey, if you use this hashtag, by the end of the week, you're going to be eligible for these 5 kinds of prizes. But you've got to do X, Y, and Z. Like each day there'll be a prize, and there's going to be this grand prize at the end of the week. And so it forced you back into the group and made you interested in coming the next day to wonder what's going to be the assignment today. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really smart. I don't know if that compares to what you've done or if you have anything you would add to that.
No, I think that that sums it up really nicely. I think the more we can get people to kind of be co-creators or co-collaborators within the
Mm-hmm.
events, they
Mm-hmm.
have that sense of ownership, and it makes it all the more fun. And that's why I think that we see a lot of growth in the like community right now. There's a lot of push in the community building, school platform, circle platform, Facebook groups, a lot of push in that direction, because when people when they have something to contribute and help others in the group, when they're asked for their opinion and when they're asked to do something, they're like, they've taken another step in your direction to buy in. I think nowadays we need more of those points where people are saying yes, and in an event space, than we did before. I think before people were maybe more they were probably all right just consuming the content. Now it's not enough. Now we need to engage them as humans and get them bought in, because they're important. And I think that's part of experience. How can we give them a
Absolutely.
good experience?
Now, I know there's different kinds of summits. We've already kind of hinted at that. There's, multi-day, there's one day that are lengthy, but there's also some summits that are you pay in advance to come. So you're receiving the fulfillment of what you paid for. There's others that are free, that there's some kind of offer that's going to be made at the end. And there's even hybrids where you come in for $27, and then at the end of the week you're made a pitch for some kind of offer. What are your experience with those three different kinds, and are there other kinds that you've seen that we also should be considering?
Yeah, so I would say that when you're looking at events, that we kind of have two big buckets, right? We have nurturing events, and then we have like cultivation of events and conversion events, is what I call them. So
Okay.
cultivation events are more nurturing. We're bringing people in to maybe experience something, experience a win. This is more of a summit style because you can bring in other speakers to help them in this journey with different expertise that the host might not be proficient at, and you're collaborating with other people and giving this really cool opportunity to know, like, and trust you, right? That's the cultivation event. And then we have conversion events where really there's only one there's one goal, and we want them to really know Phil, not anyone else. We're not going to bring on a whole bunch of other speakers because that really dilutes Phil's message. And what we really want is Phil's warm audience to come and get to know him even more, understand his process, and then pitch them something at the end. When we bring that conversion aspect and try to fit it into a summit format where there's many different speakers, it's going to be really hard to convert into something at all high ticketed, because there's so many other people speaking, many different topics, and you can't really pitch at the end of that type of event, because there are many directions that are happening. You have speakers coming on speaking about their topic, and they're going to be sharing maybe their freebie. And so you have your audience going in all these different directions, which is great if you're cultivating and creating a what I call the low barrier to entry, right? They're cold. And the goal of that cultivation event is to bring a cold audience to warm, and maybe even a little hotter, like they've already said yes to you in purchasing a ticket. So in that form of event, when I'm working with clients, I tend to say, let's start with a free event, like a free cultivation event, and then we bring them through a funnel process where they can decide. They come in for free, and we got them on your email list, so that's great. So we can continue to nurture them even if they don't show up to your event. But we give them the opportunity to upgrade, right? We create some sort of way to monetize the event so they can upgrade. And already we're starting to segment the audience and qualify them in an easier, a simple way. So they're saying yes, they're upgrading their ticket. Maybe it's all access pass, a VIP, probably something you've experienced as well. And then you're starting to already cultivate an audience, and you can know where your cold leads, and they can start being warmed up and nurtured in your email and then in your event, and maybe they'll purchase later on, or they already start from cold and they go to warm pretty quick because they buy a ticket. And so you already know in your system that you've built out with your event, okay, these people have already purchased, something small, but they said yes to me. You've created this journey, this opportunity for them to take little steps towards you. Versus a conversion event where you probably already have a warm audience. They've maybe already said yes to you in a way, but you want them to say even bigger yes. We can't take cold clients to say that bigger yes, over 1,000, over 2,000 from a summit, or from a $0 ticket to all of a sudden spending $1,000 or $2,000 with you. So that's why I like to separate these two types of events, because they both have the time and the place, but they have different goals, different purposes.
So you're saying in the cultivating event, you might bring them in for free, but you are going to make some kind of small offer. Hey, get the recordings or get access to this special extra event at the end or whatever for $97 or some small amount that's easy to say yes to. You're hoping 20% or whatever percent will say yes. You could charge something really small to get them in the door, but more than likely, because these are cold contacts, it's better to make it free. So in that context, you don't recommend having a high dollar pitch at the end, but instead cultivating them post event, getting them into some other kind of process where you would make a higher dollar pitch, or
exactly. So I would think if you're doing a summit and you're having, 10, 20, 30 speakers, right? We've done summits from all sorts of numbers, but 10's like summits, we're roughly around 10 speakers, something like that. And exactly, you're going to try to pitch something at the end of that, and it's going to get diluted in all of the stuff. And we all know that like a confused mind doesn't purchase. And if they're going to see all these different things that are happening, it's just going to hurt you. So what we have done is we've kind of separated these two different styles. And I've done this with a client. She did network marketing, and we did a network marketing summit. So a cultivation event where we brought lots of different speakers on, got a big registrant list. I think it was over 1,000 people who came into the event. And then right off of that event, we did a conversion event. So anyone who had bought, they got their free ticket, maybe they upgraded. And then right the week after, I believe we did a conversion event, which was like actually a challenge. So there was no other speakers. It was really just my client. And she walked people through her strategy and then pitched at the end, and did about 50,000, I think, in her pitch for that challenge. And no, together with the summit, it was about 50,000, I think she did. And that worked really well because we had people who were cold and didn't know who she was just a week prior. They might not have been ready to work with her, but they saw her so much throughout the summit, interviewing all these different speakers. And then they got to work, closer with her in this challenge, so that by the end of it, they were ready to buy. So it was like, it really takes this process, sales process, which could, be anywhere from like 9 months to a year long, depending, and compresses it into a smaller time frame.
Interesting. Let me ask you a question. I want you to explain the difference of a challenge. Well, I'll actually do it right now. What's the difference between a challenge and a summit? How would you define that difference?
Yeah. So a challenge, the challenge is based around the expert, based around you and your process. And maybe a challenge, you can either take an aspect of your program that you offer, you're selling, or you take some sort of tangible win that you can walk people through a process and they have accomplished something after with a challenge. So you're challenging them and you're giving them a little win and a taste of what it's like to work with you. But it's all revolving around you. You're not really bringing in other experts. In a challenge, you might bring in someone else to kind of bolster you and like, yeah, Phil's amazing. He's great. I've worked with him. But they're not selling anything else. There's nothing else being pitched. The focus is really on your offer, your process, you, the expert. And that works really well if you already have an audience, or you have money to spend on ads where you can test this out. So those are the two differentiating factors that work well with challenges. You have money for ads, or you have an audience that's ready to go. They're primed for the challenge. A summit is what I like to call, it's lead generating. Really, like one of the biggest goals of a summit is to generate and create a low barrier to entry to you, to your world. It's like inviting someone over for a coffee. It's neutral. It gives the user or the attendee a safe space to come and just like poke around and see what you're like, and hear your style and hear your questions, and see you on stage with other experts. They might be coming in because of someone else on the stage, because of they're part of someone else's audience, and they might not know who Phil is. So they can spend some time hearing their favorite person together with Phil, and then Phil's able to borrow or leverage that likability from the other person. And that new audience member can go, okay, well, they can make a decision. Do I like Phil? Do I not like Phil? And they see him and they're like, okay, well, I have now spent some time and I've decided I like Phil. I like what he stands for. I like how he speaks. And they can make that decision within the summit space to keep on being interested in you or not. And so I kind of see the summit as you're inviting someone over for a cup of coffee with you, and maybe you're treating them to a cake. So you have, in Germany, we have coffee and cake every lunch or every afternoon. And maybe that's our version. The summit is our coffee and cake. Get to know, get to know.
But in a way, you're saying, come get to know me and my 20 friends who are
Yes.
presenting
Yeah.
at the summit.
So maybe a better illustration is the block party, right? So you're getting to know everyone, you create a block party. So that's another good illustration. You're new to town, not everyone knows you. You have a block party, everyone brings in a bit of food. You create this
like
no,
that.
Yeah, it's
the
it's
no
a
like
safe,
trust.
the no like trust factor, but it's like you feel safe and you feel served, and you're bringing a bunch of people together that all have a similar purpose. Like you all live together in that same community, so that binds you. And the summit's like, okay, you're all interested in this topic and these topics that fit together, and that kind of binds you as a community. So maybe the block party is a better illustration.
I like that. Let's stick with the summit for just a minute. I want to get to the challenge again, but with the summit, when you're inviting, let's say it's 10 speakers, just to keep it easy here, are you sharing the list with all of them? And what's the expectation on those speakers who are participating? And what do you give to them for participating?
Yeah, that is a great question. And it really depends on what you want to do and how you do it. I would say sharing the list is not common. I have seen people do it, but generally the list is one of the most valuable things you have in your business as an asset. So sharing the list is typically not shared, but you offer, so when you're speaking at a summit, well, let's back up a little bit. I try to create, when I'm doing summits, a win-win-win situation for everyone. So let's imagine the summit like a cake, and you, the host, you create the opportunity to eat the cake. You create this cake and you get the biggest portion of it because you've done really all the work. And then you bring on your collaborative partners who are who get pieces of the cake as well, because they've also put an ingredient in as well. So they get a little slice of the cake. That slice of the cake would be them offering a freebie or a gift, right? So they're able to already attract people from this collaborative audience and get them onto their email list using the gift that they are offering. Normally it makes sense if the topic that they're speaking on, it logically fits. Like, okay, we're talking about VIP days and how you can create VIP days for your consultancy. You can grab my checklist on how to do your own VIP day. It logically makes sense, and people who are interested in that topic are going to sign up for that gift and go on to your partner, your collaborative partners list. So they get a smaller slice of the cake, and then the audience, obviously, they get a win because they get a plethora or a smorgasbord, I guess you could say, of all this different content. So there are some ways that you could look at the email list. You can, some speakers who you might want to work together with, they might negotiate with you and say, look, I will only speak if I get the email list. And I would say I'm very careful who I would share the email list with. It would be have to be someone I trust and I know, because if you're sharing that audience, and it's coming from your event, it is, and if they are going to abuse that list or spam it or something, that can look badly on you. So this is why I would say careful with sharing the list first. If you really trust the person, then you can negotiate that. The thing that I offer all the speakers is 50%. A 50% on any upgrade within the event, if it's a VIP ticket or all access pass. 50% is kind of the bare minimum of what you would share with the speaker, and you can go up from there. And you might be thinking, well, why would I want to risk the profit of my event? And because I've had people where we're doing 80%, or even I've seen people who have like 100% of the whatever they earned at the event go to the speaker, right? But if we're thinking about the long-term strategy, which is leads, customers, the registrants, they tend to be a lot more valuable than the money that you're using. You can imagine how much you would be paying for that person to register if you're using a Facebook ad, right? Especially in a niche that, business might cost you quite a bit of money. If you do an event and you have to say goodbye to $47, it might be worth it for you to pay to get that person to come on your list via a JV partner or strategic partners, how I like to call them. So those would be my thoughts.
Should you ever pay someone to speak at your summit?
I do not ever pay anyone to speak at my summit. I have yet to see a return on that kind of investment. Summits, how I look at are, they're similar to podcasts. They're it's a collaborative event. It is not a keynote. It is not a specialized training. It is not a conference where you are kind of paying a John Maxwell to come and be a big name and attract people. So I would say, no, you probably shouldn't pay a speaker, especially if you're starting off and you don't have the budget for it. I think being a paid speaker, having paid speakers makes a lot of sense if they are someone who is really walking your community through some sort of keynote journey, some sort of training. Maybe it's for your mastermind. Maybe it's for like a higher, like elite group of people. Then it makes sense. But for a summit situation, no.
Now, some people with their summits will get sponsors. And one model that I've heard with sponsors is that sponsors are significantly responsible for getting people in the seats. And like that could be a form of sponsorship, is that, a big sponsor will say, yeah, we'll promote this to our list of 1 million people or 100,000 people or 10,000, whatever size of their list is. And and as a result of that, they will get, maybe a list, maybe whatever you promise to them. Sometimes they'll pay for it. But there's a couple of questions within that. One is, do you have experience working with sponsors? Let's just go with that question first. What's your experience with having sponsors for summits?
Not really big sponsors. What we have done in some events is we've had certain speakers who have acted like a sponsor, where they've paid something and have had like priority placement or email marketing or, certain other things that you can throw into the event that just highlights them. And they've paid something to basically be top of advertising of the event. So that would be one way of looking at sponsorship. If you're looking at something, larger than that, then you probably have already run your event before and can show the sponsor that it's worthwhile for them. So that I haven't had experience with that situation yet.
So would you ever include speakers who aren't willing to promote the event but are happy to speak?
It depends on the speaker and on the relationship. So yes, I have done that because I've known, oh my goodness, like they would be amazing. Just one quick story. I had Jennifer Allwood. if you know
Mhm.
who that is, a
Sure.
business coach, speak at one of our summits that we put on for boutique e-commerce. And we really wanted her. We got in contact with her. She said yes. And we're like, oh, that's so cool. Like Jennifer Allwood, she's, big influential lady. A lot of people know her. And then we were going to work with a contract and ask if she would promote. A lot of the other speakers, we gave her a contract and said, if you're speaking at this event, we would like you to promote twice your email list. And then I gave her the contract and she's like, oh my goodness, no, I can't sign anything contractually. Like, I'm happy to speak, but I'm not going to promote anything. And I talked to my client and I was like, is that okay with you? Like, that she won't promote? And she's like, oh my goodness, yes, that's no problem. Because with Jennifer Allwood, was quite well known in that space. So it was enough for us. It was enough, like, I guess,
Credibility. Yeah.
credibility, just having her face on it and her being part of the event, that, we didn't need her to promote anyway. And in those circumstances, when I have people like, oh, I can't do that, or we're too busy. I have also asked, like, okay, well, would you be willing just to post one time on your social or on your story? You just don't want too many of those in your event. Like, if you are depending on speakers to promote your summit and you want to do this organically and you're not running ads, then we need to make sure that the majority of the speakers are willing to promote and only a small percentage. So I'm always looking at like 80%, 20%. 80% are going to be great promotional partners. That's my goal. 20% are A-listers like Jennifer Allwood, or they're small and they probably don't have a list, but they have great topics. So that's kind of my rule of thumb for when I'm designing events.
And it sounds like whether they're promoting it or not, you've got to be really clear on what's the why for a speaker to be part of this event. What are they getting out of it? What's the exposure, the opportunity to gain and grow that, and make sure you're clear on communicating that to them so that you can deliver on that, as well as to the audience.
Yeah, and I would say for most speakers, the monetization, or the ability to get 50% income is not so important for them. It is more important for them to be seen on events and get in front of new audiences. And that's, from my experience, most people are more interested in being out there. And even if you seem like they're really big, a lot of influencers, a lot of speakers, a lot of businesses are happy to be on any stage, really. Some are very busy, and then it might be like you're asking a favor of them. But I would say for the majority of the people that we worked with, it's been something that many people are looking for. Is like, just, I'd love to speak at any event. And if you can show that you're going to have 1,000+ people, like, even better for them.
So you've been to the networking parties, and I have too, where there's some people there that have a stack of business cards and their goal is to hand them all out. But if you take that mentality to a block party, which is how you've described the summit, you're not going to take business cards to a block party because you're there to hang out with your neighbors and get to know your neighbors. But I've been to summits where every single speaker has some kind of pitch at the end of their session. If you want this resource, here, give me your email and I'll send you the resource. So how do you control that? How do you give the speaker what they want, which is ability to get some people to follow them without it becoming a card pushing pitch fest? Because that would be like the worst experience ever, to go to 20 sessions and have 20 pitches. You're going to be worn out, and that's going to be a negative impression for you as the organizer, I would think.
Yeah. So another rule of thumb is I don't want my speakers to pitch anything paid. Because exactly, it just becomes a pitch fest and it's no fun. And we want to think about the audience first, the customer first, like what is going to be a good experience for them. I want to make sure that within, and this is the beauty of having an interview style of event, is that you can guide the discussion, you can guide what's happening. If you're just allowing people to get on stage and talk and do their presentation, you're kind of giving over that authority, and then you don't have the ability to guide it. And so that's why I'm really hesitant with allowing people just to talk on my stage. I would rather be the interviewer, because then I can feel, or I can try to get and direct the conversation to best benefit the audience. Get some like tangible, like how can they get a result? How can I give them a win out of this interview? And then we give them the ability, of course, to give something away for free. It shouldn't feel like a pitch, though. It should feel like a natural, logical next step. If you're interested in this topic, then no problem. Like, here are the next steps. And when it's kind of configured that way, it doesn't feel like a pitch fest. It just feels like, oh man, I was really interested in that. I'm so glad that they had that resource for me. But if it just feels like it's a business card and like you're being forced to listen to another sales presentation over and over again, like, no, Summit shouldn't be a series of sales presentations. That's not the goal. A summit is the block party. Like, how do we get to know people? How do we create stories? How do we help people hear new messages or new possibilities and enable them to dream differently in their life, or have different solutions that they maybe never saw, and they can look at those interviews and look at the other person that they're listening to and go, that could be me too. Like, that would be possible for me. And that's my goal with the event.
Yeah. And if you're at a block party and you've had an interesting conversation with a neighbor that you've never talked to, or you've never really talked to very long, the natural next step is you're both going to pull out your phones and say, I'd love to get your number and let's set up coffee. And this is the online version of that. I'm going to do it right now. If someone says, hey man, I love what you're saying, Danny, I'd love to follow up with you, then we offer, here's the website, here's where to go follow up with Danny. You get to know her, and you can follow up with her. And like, if you were interviewing someone, you could do something like that, right? That's what you would do at a block party, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's natural. It doesn't feel weird.
Yeah. And obviously we're modeling, but if you saw that and you want to follow up with Danny, that's how you do it. One last question. So flipping over to challenges, one of the challenges that I was part of recently, I didn't know that they were going to have this pitch at the end of the week for something really expensive. They never said anything about it up front. And actually, I had a friend that I invited to it who really didn't know that was going to happen. And out of, let's say, 9 or 10 hours of content, at least 2 hours were spent on the pitch. For me, it felt very excessive. So I had a couple problems with it. One was, didn't know it was coming. And two, the entire week was spent essentially building up to forecasting and making a pitch. And it wasn't ultimately about giving you a taste of the transformation, even though that did happen. Transformation happened, but it got overshadowed by the pitch. So what are best practices? Should we tell people up front that there's going to be something at the end?
Yeah.
And is there like a better formula for how much time should be spent on that? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think 2 hours sounds a little excessive, especially online, right? It is true that our capacity to receive information is just shorter online, right? There's so many things going around. I think it should come natural. Yes, like, you should be clear, like, this is part of the program that we do, and we're giving you a little taster of it. And that's how I like to do it. Right? I feel like I'm going to be upfront. Like, obviously I want to sell you something because I know that it's going to help you, but I do it in a way that feels good and natural to me. And I try to weave it into that process of giving people wins. It's like, okay, well, I want to make sure that you get like a crap load of value, and that you're able to really walk away from this challenge with something that you can implement with or without me, right? That's the goal. But if you do need that extra bit of help, we cover this in my group. We cover, like, I walk through people, and you might need that. And that's where that pitch makes sense. There's going to be this next step. And my goal is, like, you can do it yourself. No problem. Take the process. But if you know that you're the type of person that needs that little bit of extra momentum, or you need the specific tool or whatever, that we actually cover that in my group, and I'm going to be talking about that on Friday, or I'll be talking about that on Thursday, and we'll go into more detail, and I'll drop little hints like that as I'm doing the training, as I'm doing the teaching, so that people are ready. And the last challenge I did, I was like, all right, are you guys ready? I'm going to share something with you. I would love to share with you. I don't even know how I formulated it. And I would have to admit, I'm not the best person at doing it, but I try to weave it in. And I asked permission first. I was like, are you guys, would you be interested in hearing like what I prepared for you? Because I really want to make sure that you get the help that you need. Like if it's without me, that's fine. You have everything that we've created in this challenge. But if you need a little extra, this is going to be for you. Is it okay if I talk about it? And everyone's like, yes, please. Like, please tell me about it. And it makes sense. And I think for us, we need to, instead of like, we need to like be quiet and then like spring on them and pitch it. Like, we're smart. Humans are smart. We should be clear about the intentions. Like, yes, I want to give you a huge win, but yes, there are possibilities to work with me at a better, like a closer level. And I just want you to know that. Yeah, without feeling sleazy and weird and surprising. And like, I wasn't expecting that. Like, that's the wrong feeling. You don't want people to feel like that.
Should they know in the marketing, like when they show up, before they show up, should they know that that's going to be the case? Or are you convincing them to show up to a challenge that, hey, I'm going to give you a taste of what I do, whatever it is. And let's just say you're creating a virtual summit or challenge. You're going to teach people how to do virtual summits or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does the marketing need to say it? Or is that just something that you say on the first day? Look, this is going to be an experience with me and what I do. And I want you to get a win and a transformation this week. I am going to tell you at the end of the week that if you want to work further with me or at a more accelerated pace, there's going to be some opportunities for that. But my focus is to give you as much value as I possibly can in the next 4 days or whatever the time frame is. Is that the way you? So I guess the question is, do you market it, or is it the first day that you set the stage for that?
So I don't market like I have this big high ticket program, but come to my challenge.
Right.
Because, right. Like
no
I wouldn't talk about that.
Up, right?
But no one's going to, they're going to be like, well, what? Hang on. That's confusing. So what I do, and it's similar to a summit, is like I build the challenge within a funnel, right? So we give people the opportunity to have micro yeses, and then we give them as many wins as possible during the challenge. So within the funnel, we're giving them a journey of what it's like to work with me and how you could upgrade and why would that make sense for you? Why wouldn't it make sense for you? So we're already creating in that customer journey, spots or steps that get closer to you. And yes, they get bigger and bigger, right? Because when you're dating someone, you only take little steps. You don't go from like, I just met you to you're married. You're like, okay, well, here, let's go out for dinner. This is how I behave. These are the things I'm interested in. And so you create that process of steps. So it shouldn't be shocking because that is off-putting, but it should be, this reminds me of when my husband and I started dating, actually. Really, really short story. When we started dating, he was like, I just want you to know, before we start dating, I have the intention of marrying you. And I was like, wow, like that. I had never dated a guy before like that. It was always, I didn't have great relationships before my husband. So that it was cool. It was shocking for me at first because I heard his intention, but then for me, it framed everything. I had it all in context and I was able to be like, all right, like that's the intention here. That's the end goal. And that makes sense. I'm okay with that. So
yeah,
that is an illustration.
So if a summit is a block party, then a challenge is a dating relationship.
Yeah.
That's leading
that
toward
next
marriage.
Yes. Yeah. And you should bring it up at the beginning. I mean, like maybe not everyone wants to bring up the marriage at the beginning, but I think you can weave in those comments. I think you can weave in like, look, we're going over this process, and this is actually a process that I use in this program called, I had just launched the Co-Creator Launchpad. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually what I'm walking you through this process, and I actually have this built into our Launchpad. I'll be talking about that little bit later on, but you're already doing this process right now. So I think we can weave it in naturally, and it feels normal. It doesn't feel weird or icky if we do it that way.
This has been amazing, Danny. So I'm more convinced than I was before this conversation that summits are here to stay. Summits are valuable. The difference between summits and challenges, the nuances of some of the different ways that you can approach a summit. We've covered a lot of great ground. Thank you for being here. What is your website the best way to follow up with you, or would you actually have encouraged them to go somewhere else?
Oh, just go on, like, social media is probably the easiest way to connect with me. Our website, you can also connect with me there, risenevents.com. But you can find me at Danny, Goeppert, on LinkedIn or on Facebook. That's where I'm mainly on. And I'm also on TikTok at Danny Co-Creator. So, but I'm not so big over there. Not yet.
All right, fantastic. So any closing thoughts as we end our call together?
Yeah, I would say, even if you feel like you're a no one and you shouldn't be doing events like that, the doors are even more open for you in the online space. You know, a lot of people, they hold themselves back from running an event, especially in-person events, because they're like, no one knows me and I'm not really an expert yet, but I know I have a message and I want to speak and I want to get out there. And I would say, well, virtual events are like the safest way of starting to create your own events, and you can do it before you're a someone. And that's actually the fastest way to become a someone, is creating the opportunity first, creating the stage first. So that's my encouragement for you today.
Summit your way to becoming someone.
Ooh, that's good, Phil. Summit your way to becoming someone. I like it.
Or something like that. Hey, you've probably watched me before. One of the things I always do is I end calls with a little bit of a saxophonic moment. So I would love for you to tell me 3 words that stick out to you about this conversation, and at least one of them needs to be emotional. So what are the 3 words that stand out for you today?
Oh, okay. Well, let's say energy, because I think I've been speaking like a mile a minute here. So that's one. That's an emotional word, right? Is energy an emotional word?
Energetic.
No. Energetic. Maybe. Okay. Energetic.
Okay.
Collaborative and community. Let's do community and collaborative, because I love relationship. Oh, relationship.
All right. Here we go. Energetic, collaborative, community. All right. This will be fun. You're a musician, right?
Yeah.
Name a key.
E minor.
Love E minor.
I just love minors.
All right. Of course, this is, to your ear, going to sound like D minor. I'm going to play E minor for me, because that's easier than transposing it up. All right.
That was really good. I loved it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully that was not only unforgettable, but inspiring. Let us know on social media something that you took away from this conversation. We'll follow up with you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Danny.
Thank you.